No one called it anxiety, because from the outside, her life looked exactly the way it was supposed to. A home, a marriage, 2 children, and a woman who never stopped. What no one saw was how heavy it had become to hold everything together and still feel like she was losing herself. Her name was Emily Carter. She was 38 years old, married, and living in a quiet neighborhood just outside Madison, Wisconsin. The kind of place people move to because it feels safe. Tree-lined streets, driveways with bicycles left on their sides, lawns trimmed just enough to show effort, not perfection. Emily used to think this was what stability looked like. The house wasn't large, but it was full of shoes by the door, full of backpacks leaning against the wall, full of the low, constant noise of life happening whether she was ready for it or not. Her husband, Daniel, worked downtown in insurance. Steady hours, predictable stress, the kind of job people respected even if they didn't fully understand it. He left early, came home tired, loved his family in the ways he knew how. Their oldest, Lucas, was 10, thoughtful, quiet, already learning how to stay out of the way. The youngest, Noah, was 3, curious, loud, endlessly present. When Noah was born, Emily stayed home. At first, it made sense. Daycare cost more than she expected. Her freelance work slowed, and everyone agreed it was temporary, just for a season. Seasons, she would learn, have a way of stretching. Her days began before anyone else's, not because she wanted to be productive, but because her mind woke her up. Lists formed before her feet touched the floor. Lunches, appointments, laundry, bills, groceries. The email she forgot to answer. The feeling she couldn't quite explain. She moved through the house quietly in the mornings, as if silence itself was something fragile. Coffee brewed. Toys were pushed back into corners. She wiped a counter already clean. By the time the sun rose, she was already tired. Not physically, emotionally. She loved her children. That part was never in question. But love didn't cancel the weight. It only made it more complicated. Lucas left for school with a quick hug. Noah clung to her leg, sticky fingers pressing into her jeans. And just like that, the day began. She filled it with motion. Meals, cleaning, reading the same book 3 times in a row, answering messages she hadn't asked for advice from. Enjoy this season. You're so lucky to be home with them. It goes by fast. Emily smiled at her phone and set it face down. Luck felt like the wrong word. By the afternoon, Noah finally napped. The house went still. That was when it usually happened. She would sit at the kitchen table, laptop open, not really working, just staring. The quiet felt loud. Her chest felt tight. Her thoughts moved faster than her hands. She tried to tell herself she was fine. Nothing was wrong. And yet, something was. She missed contributing financially, missed the feeling of earning, missed being more than the person who kept everything running. She tried small things, online searches, ideas scribbled in a notebook, plans that looked good until she imagined how little time she actually had. Every option felt like another thing she might fail at, and the guilt followed quickly behind. Guilt for wanting more, guilt for not being grateful enough, guilt for feeling overwhelmed by a life she had prayed for years ago. In the evenings, when Daniel came home, she tried to explain, but words felt clumsy. "I'm just tired," she would say, and he would nod because tired made sense. What she didn't know how to say was this: that her mind never rested, that even in stillness, something inside her stayed alert, watching, preparing, bracing. She prayed at night, nothing dramatic, just quiet sentences whispered into the dark. "Help me slow down. Help me be enough. Help me understand why I feel like this." There was no answer she could hear, and so she lay awake, listening to the house breathe around her, wondering when life had become something she had to manage instead of live. Emily learned quickly that staying home did not mean slowing down. It meant being needed at all times. by someone, for something, without pause. Noah's nap schedule ruled the day. Lucas's school calendar dictated the week. Bills quietly defined the month. Every decision carried weight. What to buy, what to save, what could wait, what couldn't. Daniel handled most of the finances, but Emily knew the numbers anyway. She had memorized them, not intentionally, but instinctively. The mortgage, health insurance, groceries that seemed to cost more every month. The quiet anxiety that rose whenever she thought about emergencies. She didn't want luxury. She wanted margin, space to breathe without calculating. Sometimes, while folding laundry, she would catch herself doing mental math. If I could bring in just a little, if I could help. The thought always ended the same way, with no clear answer. She had worked before. She liked working. She liked being trusted with responsibility that didn't involve snacks or nap times. But the logistics felt impossible. Who would watch Noah? How much would childcare erase what she earned? What would happen if one of the kids got sick? Every option felt like a trade she wasn't sure she could afford. So she stayed. And staying, she realized, required its own kind of strength, one no one ever applauded. During the day, she moved through the neighborhood pushing Noah in the stroller. Madison felt calm, steady, almost deceptively peaceful. Other parents smiled politely. Some waved. Some stopped to talk. "So nice you get to stay home," one woman said once, adjusting her sunglasses. "I wish I could." Emily smiled. She didn't explain that staying home wasn't the same as being at rest. In the afternoons she scrolled, not endlessly, just enough to feel worse. Friends from college posting about promotions, former co-workers announcing new roles, photos from conferences she used to attend. She felt proud of them. She really did. But pride didn't cancel the quiet ache. It only sat beside it. She told herself this was temporary, that seasons change. But the uncertainty pressed in on her chest in ways she couldn't explain. At night, when the kids were asleep and Daniel watched the news from the couch, Emily sat beside him, laptop balanced on her knees. She searched for ways to contribute. Remote work, part-time consulting, side businesses that promised flexibility. Every article promised freedom. None mentioned exhaustion. She bookmarked pages she never returned to, closed tabs that asked too much. Daniel noticed. "You don't have to do everything," he said once gently. "We're okay." She nodded, but okay felt fragile. It felt like a word that depended on everything continuing exactly as it was. And Emily didn't trust that. Her mind stayed alert, even when her body wanted rest. She lay awake, replaying conversations that hadn't happened yet, imagining worst-case scenarios she couldn't stop preparing for. What if something happened to Daniel? What if one of the kids needed more than they could afford? What if she stayed home too long and forgot how to re-enter the world? She prayed again. This time, not for answers, but for quiet. "Please," she whispered, staring at the ceiling. "Just let my mind rest." But rest didn't come. Morning arrived anyway, and with it, the familiar rhythm. Breakfast, backpacks, shoes that didn't fit quite right anymore. Emily kept moving, because movement felt safer than stillness. Stillness left too much room for thought. One afternoon, while Noah played on the floor, Emily stood at the sink, staring out the window. Her reflection caught her off guard. She looked fine, not broken, not overwhelmed, not failing, just tired in a way sleep didn't fix. She wondered how many women looked like this, holding everything together on the outside, while quietly unraveling on the inside. She didn't feel depressed. She didn't feel hopeless. She felt on edge, like something bad might happen, even when nothing was wrong. And the hardest part? She didn't feel like she had permission to feel this way. Her life, by all visible standards, was good. So why did gratitude feel heavy instead of freeing? Why did faith, something that once brought comfort, now feel like another expectation she wasn't meeting? She believed in God. She still did. But lately, Faith felt like something she had to perform correctly. Trust more, worry less, be grateful. The pressure was quiet but constant. She compared herself to the version of her she thought she should be, calmer, more confident, more content, and every comparison widened the gap. That night, after the kids were asleep, Emily sat alone in the living room. The house was quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet. She pressed her palms together, more out of habit than intention. "I don't know what's wrong with me," she whispered, "and I don't know how to explain it." She waited. Nothing answered back, but for reasons she couldn't name, she stayed there a little longer. Emily didn't notice it all at once. At first, it was just a tightness, a subtle pressure beneath her ribs, like a held breath she kept forgetting to release. She blamed coffee, then posture, then stress, the harmless kind, she told herself. Everyone had stress, but this felt different. It followed her. In the car, waiting at red lights, in the grocery store, standing in line, in the quiet moments when nothing was wrong. Her heart would suddenly race, fast and loud, as if reacting to a danger she couldn't see. She learned to breathe through it. Slow inhale, long exhale. Smile if anyone was watching. The first time it happened in public, she was at Lucas's school pickup. Parents stood in small clusters, laughing, phones in hand. Emily leaned against her car. Noah balanced on her hip. Then the ground seemed to tilt. Her chest tightened. Her vision narrowed. Her hands tingled, fingers stiff and unfamiliar. For a terrifying second, she thought she might pass out. She shifted Noah to the stroller and bent slightly, pretending to adjust the straps. "Get it together," she told herself. "You're fine." By the time Lucas ran toward her, backpack bouncing, she was already smiling. "Hey buddy," she said, voice steady. "Good day?" He nodded, oblivious. The moment passed, but something inside her changed. Fear had found a way in. At home, she Googled symptoms. She told herself she wouldn't, but she did. Chest tightness, shortness of breath, racing heart. The internet gave her too many answers, none of them comforting. She closed the laptop and sat very still, Noah playing at her feet. "This is just anxiety," she told herself. "People live with this every day," but knowing the name didn't make it lighter. If anything, it made it feel more real, more permanent. Daniel noticed the change before she said anything. "You okay?" he asked one evening, watching her press her fingers against her wrist. "You've been quiet." "I'm fine," she said automatically. It wasn't a lie, it just wasn't the whole truth. She didn't know how to explain a fear that didn't have a clear cause. How do you tell someone you're afraid of nothing and everything at the same time? They began missing each other in small ways. Daniel came home tired, mind still wrapped around deadlines and meetings. Emily was already drained, though she couldn't point to a single moment that caused it. Dinner conversations stayed practical. Schedules, school forms, weekend plans. They laughed when appropriate, functioned well, but something fragile hovered beneath it all. At night, when Daniel reached for her, Emily sometimes froze, not because she didn't love him, but because her body felt unpredictable. She worried that closeness might trigger the tightness again, that he would feel her heart racing and think it was something else. So she turned away some nights, claiming exhaustion. Daniel didn't push, which somehow made it worse. The anxiety grew quieter, not louder, more constant, like background noise you don't notice until it stops. Except, it never stopped. Emily started avoiding things she once enjoyed. Long drives, crowded places, silence, especially silence. Silence left room for her thoughts to spiral unchecked. She stayed busy instead, cleaning surfaces already clean, organizing cabinets no one would open, rearranging things that didn't need rearranging. Movement felt like control. One afternoon, while folding laundry, Her chest tightened again, sharper this time. Her breath caught. She sat on the floor, back against the washing machine, knees pulled to her chest. Noah toddled toward her, confused. She forced herself to breathe slowly, counting each inhale. "You're safe," she told herself. "This will pass." It did. But afterward she cried, quietly, shoulders shaking, face buried in her hands. Not because of fear, because of exhaustion. That night, she told Daniel, "Not everything, just enough." "I've been feeling off," she said, staring at her plate. "Physically." He looked up immediately. "What do you mean?" "Like my heart races sometimes, and I feel tight. I think it's anxiety." The words sat between them, heavier than she expected. Daniel frowned, concerned. "Have you talked to anyone? A doctor?" She shook her head. "I don't want it to be a big thing." He reached for her hand. "Emily," he said gently, "it already is a big thing if it's affecting you." She nodded, eyes burning. "I don't want to be dramatic." "You're not," he said quickly. But she could hear it, the uncertainty beneath his reassurance. Neither of them knew what to do next. Faith, once again, felt complicated. Emily prayed, not long prayers, not eloquent ones, just fragments. "Please calm this. Please don't let this get worse. Please help me be okay for them." She waited for peace. It didn't come. She waited for reassurance. Nothing. She began to wonder if her anxiety was a sign of weak faith. If she trusted God more, wouldn't this stop? Wasn't she supposed to cast her cares, release her worries, believe? The questions multiplied. The guilt followed. One Sunday, sitting in church, Emily felt her chest tighten halfway through the service. The sanctuary was warm, crowded. The music swelled. People around her raised their hands. She couldn't breathe. She stepped out quietly, heart pounding, standing alone in the hallway until the feeling passed. When she returned, she felt disconnected, like a visitor observing something she used to belong to. Faith had not disappeared, but it no longer felt accessible. It felt like a language she once spoke fluently and now struggled to remember. She wondered if God was disappointed in her, if he saw her anxiety as failure, if he expected more strength than she had left. That thought stayed with her. One evening, scrolling absent-mindedly on her phone, she paused on a short video. A woman speaking softly about feeling overwhelmed, unseen, constantly on edge. The comments were full of strangers saying, "This is me." Emily didn't comment. She didn't share. But she watched it twice. Something about knowing she wasn't alone loosened the knot in her chest. Just a little. She saved the video. Not to fix anything, just to remember. Later that night, after Daniel fell asleep, Emily lay awake staring at the ceiling. Her hand rested over her heart. It was beating steadily now, calm. But she knew it wouldn't always be, and that thought scared her more than the episodes themselves. "God," she whispered, voice barely audible. "I'm trying, I really am." No response came, but for the first time, she didn't stop praying immediately. She stayed with the silence, not because it felt comforting, but because leaving felt worse. Anxiety didn't arrive like an emergency. It arrived like erosion, quiet, persistent, unnoticed, until something gave way. Emily learned how to function around it. She scheduled her days carefully, building buffers between tasks, avoiding situations she couldn't control. She memorized escape routes in public places. She learned which grocery stores were less crowded, which hours felt safer. From the outside, she looked organized, efficient, together. Inside, she felt like she was constantly negotiating with her own body. "Not now. Please, not now." She smiled through school meetings. She nodded through conversations. She laughed when laughter was expected. And every night, She collapsed into bed, feeling as though she had survived something no one else had seen. The breaking point didn't come during a panic episode. It came on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Rain pressed softly against the windows. Noah was coloring at the table. The house smelled faintly of laundry detergent and coffee gone cold. Emily stood at the sink, washing a single mug. Her chest tightened, not suddenly, slowly. Her breath shortened. Her hands trembled. She gripped the counter, knuckles whitening. "It's okay," she told herself. "You've handled this before." But her body didn't respond. Her heart began to race, faster than usual, louder. Her vision blurred slightly at the edges. The room felt too small. Her thoughts spiraled. What if this doesn't stop? What if something is really wrong? What if the kids see? She slid down against the cabinet, sitting on the kitchen floor. "Noah," she called, forcing calm into her voice. "Sweetie, can you come here?" He padded over, crayon still in hand, eyes wide with curiosity. "What's wrong, Mommy?" The question broke something in her. "I just need a minute," she said, swallowing hard. "I'm okay." She wasn't sure if she was convincing him or herself. She focused on his small face, his steady breathing, the sound of rain. Slowly, painfully, the episode passed, but the aftermath lingered. Emily sat there long after her heart steadied, staring at nothing. She felt exposed, fragile, and deeply tired of pretending. That evening, Daniel came home to a quiet house. Emily sat at the table, hands folded, posture rigid. He knew immediately. "What happened?" he asked, setting his keys down. She looked up at him, eyes rimmed red. "I can't do this alone anymore," she said. The words surprised her, how easily they came once she stopped holding them back. He pulled out a chair, sitting across from her. "Tell me," he said gently. And she did. Not perfectly, not in order. She told him about the constant tension, the fear of losing control, the way her body reacted without permission. She told him about the guilt, about feeling like she was failing at something she was supposed to handle naturally. Daniel listened quietly, no fixing, no minimizing. When she finished, he reached across the table and took her hands. "You don't have to carry this by yourself," he said. Tears slipped down her face. "I don't know how to make it stop," she whispered. "Maybe stopping isn't the first step," he said. "Maybe understanding it is." The next week, Emily sat in a small office with neutral walls and a box of tissues on the table. A therapist. The word felt heavy. She hadn't told many people. Part of her still felt like she was admitting weakness. But as she spoke, slowly at first, then more freely, something shifted. Naming the fear didn't make it stronger. It made it clearer. "This isn't failure," the therapist said gently. "It's your nervous system asking for care." Emily let that sink in. She had spent so long trying to override her body, to push through, that she had forgotten how to listen. The work wasn't immediate. There were no instant breakthroughs. Some days felt lighter, others didn't. But she was no longer alone inside it. At home, Daniel adjusted his schedule when he could. Lucas became more attentive in small ways. Noah learned when Mommy needed quiet. Life didn't slow down, but it softened. Faith still felt complicated. Emily didn't pray for anxiety to disappear anymore. Instead, she prayed differently. "Help me stay present. Help me not be afraid of my own body. Help me accept help." She stopped measuring faith by how calm she felt. She started measuring it by honesty. One evening, sitting on the porch while the kids played, Emily noticed something unexpected. Her heart was beating fast, but she wasn't afraid. She breathed through it, grounded in the moment. The anxiety passed, not because she fought it, but because she didn't. That realization stayed with her. Healing, she began to understand, wasn't about erasing symptoms. It was about changing her relationship with them. Still, doubt lingered. There were days she wondered if this was as good as it would get. if peace would always feel conditional. That night, as she tucked Noah into bed, he wrapped his arms around her neck. "You okay now?" he asked softly. She smiled. "Yes," she said honestly. "I am." And for the first time in a long while, the answer felt true. Not because everything was fixed, but because she wasn't hiding anymore. Peace didn't arrive the way Emily once imagined it would. There was no morning where she woke up and realized everything was suddenly easy. No day where anxiety disappeared without leaving a trace. No dramatic moment that divided her life into before and after. What came instead was quieter, slower, more honest. Emily learned that healing doesn't announce itself. It blends into ordinary days, into making breakfast while the sun rises softly through the kitchen window, into folding laundry without rushing, into noticing her breath, not because she was afraid, but because she was present. Some mornings the familiar tightness still appeared, and when it did, she no longer panicked. She paused, placed a hand over her chest, reminded herself, "This will pass, and I will be here when it does." That alone felt like progress. She stopped asking herself when she would be normal again, stopped comparing her inner life to other people's outer calm. She began to understand something she had never been taught: that strength isn't the absence of anxiety. It's the willingness to stay kind to yourself when anxiety shows up. Emily still went to therapy, still prayed, though her prayers had changed. They weren't requests for rescue anymore. They were acknowledgements. "I'm here. I'm trying. Thank you for staying with me, even when I don't feel strong." Faith no longer felt like a performance. It felt like companionship, a presence that didn't demand constant certainty. Daniel noticed the difference, not because Emily was suddenly happier, but because she was more herself. She laughed more easily, spoke more honestly, let herself rest without guilt. Their marriage softened too. They stopped trying to protect each other from hard conversations. They learned to sit in silence together, not as avoidance, but as trust. Lucas grew more observant, more gentle. Noah remained Noah, bright, loud, fully present. And Emily realized something unexpected. Her children weren't watching to see if she was perfect. They were watching to see if she was real. One afternoon, while watching the kids play in the yard, Emily felt the familiar flutter in her chest. She noticed it, acknowledged it, and then her attention shifted to laughter, to movement, to life unfolding in front of her. The anxiety faded into the background. Not gone, but no longer in control. Emily thought back to the woman she had been before anxiety entered her life. The one who believed peace meant feeling good all the time. She felt compassion for her. She had been doing her best with what she knew. Now, peace meant something different. Peace meant safety, even in discomfort. Peace meant knowing that difficult feelings didn't make her broken. They made her human. She no longer tried to force joy. She allowed it to arrive naturally, in small moments. A warm cup of coffee, a quiet walk, a deep breath that didn't feel earned, just received. Faith had changed too. It no longer promised protection from struggle. It promised presence within it. Emily understood now. God had not been absent during her anxiety. He had been gentle, patient, waiting for her to stop fighting herself long enough to notice. One evening, after the kids were asleep, Emily sat alone in the living room. The house was still, her heart steady. She closed her eyes, not to pray, not to ask, just to be. And in that stillness, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Not relief, not excitement, but a deep, steady sense of okayness, as if her nervous system finally believed what her mind was learning, that she was safe, that she was not failing, that she was allowed to take up space, even on hard days. Emily knew anxiety might return. She wasn't naive. But she also knew something else now. She could meet it with compassion, with support, with faith that didn't rush her toward healing, but walked beside her through it. And that changed everything. If this story sounds familiar, if you've ever felt overwhelmed by a life that looks good from the outside, while your inside feels restless, tired, or afraid, you are not weak, you are not failing, and you are not alone. Sometimes healing doesn't mean becoming someone new. It means learning how to stay with yourself until peace feels possible again. If this story found you, maybe it was meant to.